Let me ask you something. Have you ever been on the ice, surrounded by other fishermen, and they're all pulling fish up, one after another? You look over, and they're all using the same thing, a balance jig. So you tie one on, feeling confident. And then nothing, absolutely nothing. It feels like you were given a dud, a plastic toy, while everyone else has the magic lure. You start to wonder, why does this lure work for everyone but me? Well, I'm here to tell you, the lure isn't the problem. The problem is how you're using it. And today, we're going to expose every single mistake. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will understand why you've been struggling, and you'll never look at a balance jig the same way again. So let me know in the comments right now. Do you believe the balance jig is overrated, or is it pure genius?
The balance jig, or jigging wrap, has been a staple in the ice fishing world for decades. It's a legend for a reason. Its unique design allows it to dart and glide in a semicircle, perfectly mimicking a dying or fleeing baitfish. It's supposed to be an aggressive, searching presentation that calls fish in from a distance and triggers reaction strikes. Because of this reputation, most anglers treat it like a simple tool. You just drop it down, rip it up, and let it fall, right? This is the core belief that sets so many people up for failure. They see it as a brute force instrument, not a finesse tool. For years, we've been told to just be aggressive and cover water. But this advice ignores the subtleties that make the difference between a full bucket and going home empty-handed. We're about to change that. First, let's talk about the most common killer of success. Your cadence is way too aggressive. Picture this. You're out on the ice, it's 10 degrees, and you're trying to stay warm by ripping that rod up 2 or 3 feet as hard as you can. You let it slam back down. You feel like you're doing something productive, right? You're making noise, sending vibrations, but down below, the fish see a chaotic, panicked, and completely unnatural movement. A real baitfish doesn't teleport up 3 feet and then crash. It flutters, it glides, it pauses. Your aggressive rips are actually scaring fish away, especially wary walleye or jumbo perch. You're screaming at the fish instead of having a conversation. We need to fix that first. Think subtle lift, not violent rip. The magic is in the glide, not the explosion. Now, on the flip side of that coin is the second mistake, being too passive. You've heard that you shouldn't be too aggressive, so you start barely moving the jig. You give it a tiny little twitch, a little shake, maybe a 6-inch lift. The problem is, a balanced jig is designed to glide, needs a sharp but short pop of the rod tip to get it to shoot out to the side and begin its signature circle. If you're too gentle, all the jig does is move straight up and straight down. It becomes no different than a standard teardrop jig. You've completely neutered its primary function. It's not searching, it's not darting, and it's not triggering anything. You've turned a hunter into a sitting duck. The key is finding that sweet spot, a snap of the wrist, not a full arm lift. It's a quick, crisp motion that loads the rod tip and launches the lure. Let's move to the single most important moment in this entire presentation, the pause. Mistake number 3 is ignoring the pause or not pausing long enough. I have watched countless anglers on camera and they are constantly in motion. They pop the jig, it falls, and the second it settles, they pop it again. 95% of your bites on a balanced jig will come when the lure is sitting perfectly still after it has completed its glide. The pop and glide attract the fish and get their attention. The pause is when they commit and eat it. Imagine a cat chasing a laser pointer. It's the moment the dot stops moving that the cat pounces. Fish are the same. You need to let that lure hang there for 3, 5, even 10 seconds. It feels like an eternity, but it's the window of opportunity for the bite. If you are always moving, You are constantly pulling the lure away from a fish that is about to strike. All right, let's talk about what's connecting you to that lure. Your line. This is a massive mistake. You're using the wrong type or the wrong weight. Many fishermen use heavy, stiff monofilament because it's cheap and they're used to it. That stiff line has memory, meaning it stays coiled. This coil acts like a spring and dampens the action of your lure. It restricts the glide and kills the subtle movements. Or they use heavy braid with no leader, which is highly visible underwater and can spook finicky fish in clear water. The ideal setup is a light fluorocarbon line or braid with a long fluorocarbon leader. Fluoro is nearly invisible and has less stretch, giving you a direct connection to the jig. This allows you to impart the perfect action and, more importantly, feel those incredibly light bites that often happen on the paws. Using 10-pound test mono for perch is a recipe for disaster. Connected to your line is your knot, and this is a subtle but deadly mistake. Most fishermen tie a standard clinch knot directly to the eye of the lure. Think about what that does. It cinches down tight, gripping the lure's eyelet. This creates a rigid connection point, which severely restricts the jig's ability to pivot and glide. You're essentially putting a leash on a dog and then holding that leash with an iron grip. The lure can't swing freely. The solution is simple. Use a loop knot. A Rapala knot, or a similar loop knot, creates a small, open loop that allows the balanced jig to pivot and move with maximum freedom. This one tiny change can completely unlock the lure's intended action, allowing it to glide wider and look far more natural. If your knot is choking your lure, you're dead in the water before you even start. Now for the obvious one that people still get wrong, lure size. You're using the wrong size for the situation. It's midwinter, the fish are lethargic, you're marking finicky jumbo perch on your sonar, and you're dropping down a number 7 or number 9 jig. That's like trying to feed a baby a giant steak. It's too big, too intimidating. Conversely, you're marking aggressive lake trout or walleye during a prime feeding window, and you're using a tiny number 3 jig. They might not even notice it, or it's not a big enough meal to be worth their energy. You have to match the size of the lure to the mood of the fish and the size of the local forage. Don't just stick with your one lucky size. Have a variety and be willing to downsize when the bite is tough or upsize when you need to be aggressive and call fish in from a distance. Let's get controversial. Color. People love to say color doesn't matter. They are wrong, dead wrong, especially with a visual lure like a balanced jig. The mistake is either sticking to one color all day or choosing a color that makes no sense for the water conditions. Imagine you're in stained, murky water. A natural perch or silver shiner pattern is going to disappear. That's where you need bright, gaudy colors like fire tiger or chartreuse to stand out. Now picture yourself on a crystal clear lake. That same fire tiger lure looks like a clown car driving through a library. It's unnatural and will spook fish. Here, you need realistic, natural patterns. Your lure color should do one of two things: stand out and create a reaction strike in dirty water, or perfectly match the hatch in clear water. Believing color doesn't matter is pure laziness. This next one is for the modern angler. You are not using your electronics correctly. Fishing with a balanced jig without a flasher or sonar is like trying to play darts blindfolded. You absolutely need to see how fish are reacting to your lure. But here's the mistake. You see a fish on the screen, and you just keep doing the same jigging motion that you were doing before. You have to use the fish's reaction to dictate your next move. If a fish comes in hot, right up to your lure, and then starts to back away, that's your cue to change. Maybe give it tiny, subtle twitches, or let it sit completely still. or maybe even slowly raise it up to trigger their predatory instinct to chase. Just jigging blindly and hoping for the best is a waste of technology. Your sonar is a communication device, and you need to listen to what the fish are telling you. This builds on the last point, but it's a specific, painful mistake. It's called chasing the marks. You see a fish rise up from the bottom to investigate your lure on the sonar. Your heart starts pounding. Your instinct is to get excited and give the jig a big rip to make sure the fish sees it. What you just did was pull the lure away from an interested customer. From the fish's perspective, the meal it was about to eat suddenly panicked and rocketed away. This often spooks them and they'll sink back to the bottom. The correct response when you see a fish rising to your lure is to slow down or stop completely. You want to tease them. Make it look like an easy, vulnerable meal. Let them get right on top of it, and then maybe give it the slightest little quiver to seal the deal. Stop playing keep away with your dinner. Let's talk about where you're fishing in the water column. The mistake is ignoring the bottom 2 feet. A lot of anglers drop their lure down, find the bottom, and then immediately reel up 3 or 4 feet to start jigging. But for much of the winter, especially during midday, walleye and perch are glued to the bottom. They're practically inhaling sand. Your lure, gliding around 4 feet above their heads, might as well be in another zip code. You need to start by working that bottom zone. Let your jig hit the bottom. Kick up a puff of silt, and then lift it just 6 inches to a foot and start your jigging sequence. This makes it look like a bait fish feeding on the bottom, and is far more likely to get the attention of those belly-hugging fish. Only move up the water column if you're marking suspended fish. Here's a mistake born of either patience or laziness. You're staying in one spot for too long. A balanced jig is a search lure. Its primary function is to call active fish in. If there are no active fish in the area, you can have the best technique in the world and you will not get bit. So you drill a hole, you drop down, and you fish it for an hour with no results. You're wasting your time. My rule is 15 minutes. If I don't mark a fish or get a bite within 15 minutes, I'm moving, even if it's just 20 or 30 feet away. Ice fishing, especially with an aggressive lure like this, is about finding the biters. Don't sit and wait for the fish to come to you. You need to go to them. Drill more holes, stay mobile. The anglers who move are the ones who consistently find fish. Let's look at the tool in your hand, your rod. The mistake is using the wrong rod for the job. Many ice fishermen use a short, stiff, broomstick-like rod. They think it's good for solid hook sets, but for a balanced jig, that stiff rod is a problem. It doesn't have the right tip action to properly launch the lure on the pop. Instead of a crisp snap, you get a jarring lift. It also makes it harder to detect those subtle upbites, where a fish swims up and just slightly lightens the weight of the lure. A rod with a fast or extra fast action, meaning a sensitive tip that quickly transitions into a strong backbone, is ideal. The soft tip helps you impart the perfect action and detect bites, while the backbone gives you the power for a solid hook set. Your rod isn't just for fighting fish. It's for breathing life into your lure. This is a subtle but critical mechanical error. You are not giving the lure enough slack to complete its glide. After you pop the rod tip up, you have to follow the lure back down with your rod tip. If you pop it up and then hold your rod tip high, you are keeping tension on the line. This tension creates drag, shortens the glide, and makes the lure fall unnaturally, almost like a pendulum. You've completely killed the searching action. The correct technique is to pop up and then immediately drop your rod tip, creating a small amount of slack in the line. This allows the lure to fall freely and glide in its full, wide circle. You should be watching your line or the spring bobber on your rod to detect a bite as it falls. Mastering this slack line drop is a non-negotiable part of the process. Many anglers like to tip their jigs with live bait, and that leads to this next mistake, over-tipping the hooks. You take a big juicy minnow head or a whole wax worm and you load it onto the center treble hook. You think you're adding scent and attraction. What you're actually doing is destroying the lure's hydrodynamics. The balance jig is precisely weighted and engineered to glide a certain way. By adding a big, bulky piece of bait, you've thrown off its center of gravity and created drag. It won't glide properly anymore. It will fall erratically or just spin. If you must tip it, use the tiniest piece of bait possible, just the very tip of a minnow head or a single maggot. The goal is to add a little scent without altering the lure's engineered action. Less is always more. This one is simple, yet so many people forget it. You're using dull hooks. You take a lure right out of the package and assume it's ready to go. Many factory hooks are not sticky sharp. Winter bites, especially from perch, can be incredibly light. The fish might just come up and mouth the lure without really slamming it. If your hook points are even slightly dull, you won't get penetration. The hook will just slide right out. Get yourself a good hook file or sharpener and touch up the points on every single hook before you use it. It should be sticky to the touch on your fingernail. It takes 10 seconds, and it can be the difference between a hookup and a missed opportunity. Never trust factory hooks to be sharp enough. Let's talk about where you're fishing. The mistake is trying to force a balanced jig to work in heavy cover, like thick weeds or submerged timber. This lure has 3 exposed sharp hooks. It is a snag magnet. If you're dropping it into a jungle of coontail or cabbage weeds, you're going to spend more time trying to get it unsnagged than you will fishing. Every time you have to rip it free from a weed, you're creating a huge, unnatural commotion that spooks every fish in a 10-foot radius. It ruins the spot and kills your confidence. A balanced jig is an open water presentation. It's designed for use on flats, along weed edges, or over rock piles and structure. If you're in the thick stuff, switch to a more weedless presentation. Don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. This is for anyone who fishes in a river or a lake with noticeable current. The mistake is ignoring the effect of that current on your lure. In a stationary body of water, the jig glides in a nice, predictable circle. But when you add current, that whole dynamic changes. On the up-current sweep of your jig, the glide will be shortened. On the down-current sweep, it will be elongated, and the lure will be carried downstream. You have to account for this. This often means you need to use a heavier jig than you normally would to get it down to the bottom and fight the current. It also means your jigging stroke might need to be more vertical and less aggressive to prevent the lure from being swept too far out of your sonar cone. If you jig with the same cadence you use in a lake, you're not in control of your presentation. Here's a psychological mistake. I call it the copycat error. You see a guy 100 yards away who is just slaying the walleye. You walk over and ask him what he's using. He shows you a number 7 balanced jig in a perch pattern. So you rush back to your spot, tie on the exact same lure and expect the same results, but you get nothing. Why? Because you only copied the what, not the where and why. Maybe he was fishing on the edge of a sharp drop-off and you're on a flat. Maybe he was in 15 feet of water and you're in 25. Maybe he was using a very specific jigging cadence that you can't see from a distance. Simply matching the lure is only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Don't just copy the lure. Try to understand why that lure is working in that specific spot for that specific angler. We need to talk about your mental game, and the biggest mistake might be a simple lack of confidence and patience. You tie on the balance jig because you heard it was good. You fish it for 10 minutes, you don't get a bite, and your brain starts telling you, this isn't working. You start to lose faith. Your jigging cadence gets sloppy. You start thinking about that bucket of live minnows you brought. So you give up and switch to a dead stick. The balance jig requires confidence. You have to trust that the action is calling fish in, even when you can't see them. You have to be patient and wait for that active school to move through. If you give up on it after a few minutes, you'll never give it a real chance to work its magic. Commit to it for at least 30 minutes in a good area before you even think about changing. Finally, let's discuss the little details that add up. The last mistake is forgetting to manage your equipment in the cold. It's below freezing. Every time you bring your lure up, it brings a little water with it. That water freezes on your line, in your rod guides, and even on the lure itself. Ice on your rod guides creates friction, ruining the smooth drop of your lure. Ice on your line adds weight and stiffness, killing the action. A chunk of ice frozen to the fin of the balance jig will make it spin and fall like a rock. You have to be diligent. Constantly check and clear ice from your guides and line. Make sure your lure is clean every time you drop it back down the hole. These are the 1% details that professional anglers obsess over because they know that in a tough bite, the little things make all the difference. So, there you have it. 20 reasons why that balanced jig might be failing you. We've covered everything from your cadence, your knot, and your line, to the way you read your sonar and the mental games you play on the ice. But what's the most unexpected takeaway from all this? It's that the balanced jig is not an aggressive power fishing lure. It's a finesse lure disguised as a power lure. The magic isn't in the rip, it's in the glide. It's not in the motion, it's in the pause. Understanding this one thing can completely revolutionize your approach. It's the aha moment that turns frustration into success. You'll stop scaring fish and start seducing them. That lure in your tackle box isn't a dud. It's a finely tuned instrument, and now you finally have the instruction manual. Thank you so much for watching. If this video helped you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that breaks down the why behind fishing. And now I want to ask you, which one of these 20 mistakes have you been guilty of? Be honest. Let's talk about it in the comments.